The first time I came in here, it was sunny. I was like,
Yeah,
what's
about
going on here?
Forget another time we did it, it'll happen more often.
I just walked out, I was like, wait a minute, something's not
Maybe
right.
4 to 6.
You're following this 3B number now.
Yep.
Okay, just under a minute.
Oh, the power's gone. Quiet a room.
30 seconds. Okay, 10 seconds. Bye.
So it's 6 p.m. and I'm gonna call to order this Lacy City Council work session on March 26th. For the record, we have Councilmember Stedman attending remotely and the rest of the council is here in council chambers. I also want to acknowledge that we, the city of Lacy, are on the ancestral land of the tribal people, the Treaty of Medicine Creek, including the Nisqually tribe and the Squaxin tribe. And with that, can I get a motion to approve today's agenda?
Move to approve the agenda as published.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Then all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Then that motion unanimously carries. We have an approved agenda. And first up on our approved agenda is the 66th traffic calming update.
So Martin had other commitments. He couldn't
Yep.
make it tonight, so Chris is gonna take the lead and give the briefing.
Good. So, good evening, council. My name is Chris Stolberg. I'm a transportation engineer for the city. I'm just going to talk about our plans for 66th Avenue traffic calming. So here's just a map showing where we're talking about. On the north side, we've got Capital City, Golf Course, and then on the south side, the Horizon Point neighborhood. And the highlighted section is where we're looking at installing traffic calming devices. Just a bit of background, we received a speeding complaint about a little over a year ago about speeding on 66th Avenue from a homeowner there. And request to install speed humps. So we, as part of our evaluation on whether or not they meet the traffic calming policy criteria, we did a speed study. So here are the results of the speed study. There's a lot of information on this report, but mainly what we're looking at is the 85th percentile speed, and whether or not that's more than 5 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. Because that indicates that there's a persistent speeding problem. It's not just 1 or 2 people through there. In this case, the 85th percentile speed was 35 miles per hour, so they clearly qualify in the criteria.
Was that ever posted 35 miles per hour, or has it always been 25?
I'm not sure.
I've lived there 18 years. It's been 25 that whole time that I know of.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm surprised it's only 35. I've seen a lot of cars fly down that road. I mean, it's a really nice little straight.
It's straight.
I mean, what is it about? Is it half a mile straight pretty much? Close?
It might be even more than that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not.
It's a long stretch.
Pretty good stretch and it's straight.
And I'm kind of surprised it's the 80, it's 35 miles per hour too. You'd think it'd probably be up around 40 plus, but okay. I was just curious if it was ever, posted higher. Because we don't consider that an arterial, right, or it's a,
We do not, you're correct.
yeah. How do you have to come up with that? I mean, it is a long stretch. And it only has sidewalks on one side though, right?
But it's a.
Yeah, just on the south side right now.
And
not-
it does connect between College Street.
Yeah, so, yeah, it goes from Rainier to Rattle.
And it's not considered because it has residential on both sides.
Yeah, it's classified as a collector in our comp plan, but we. We kind of consider, for traffic calming purposes, we consider it a residential street just because it's, neighborhood.
Sure.
I mean, there's good distribution there with Value Straight and other routes, so.
But the only, because people can pull off each one of those, right, off of 66, right?
Yeah, so, access, all of these connect up to 66.
Okay. Thank you.
So for the next part of the process, we established a boundary to circulate a petition. We require 60% approval in order to move forward with installing temporary traffic calming devices. So they were able to get 60% of the homeowners to sign on the petition. And we really targeted kind of the properties that were where the home is facing 66th Avenue, because they're the ones that are going to be most affected by the speeding, but also most affected by the traffic calming devices. So here's a picture of the speed humps that we'll be installing. The top photo is where we recently installed them on 8th Avenue Northeast. And these are going to be purchased by the city and installed by city staff.
How do you decide which type of traffic calming device you're gonna use?
We kind of discuss it with the neighborhood group or whoever their representative is. Speed humps tend to be what they, is what's most frequently requested.
Because it's also one of the loudest too.
Yeah, so that's
Right.
part of why we do the temporary installation is, so they get to live with them for.
Okay.
Let's see.
What is the lifespan of a speed hump?
For these ones, they've got a 15-year warranty. So they're made out of like plastic and recycled rubber and.
So I don't mean to jump ahead, but if they say, okay, we want to keep them, replacement, is that still at a 50-50 at replacement time, or does that change?
So if they want to do a permanent installation, then yeah, it's 50% cost sharing with the city, and we usually would look at doing like asphalt for the speed humps. We could consider making these a permanent installation. We do have these in on Slater Kinney and Panorama City that they've been there for 8 years, I think, so.
To answer your question, we wouldn't ask for 50% at such time that they need to be replaced in 10 to 15 years. Part of the cost sharing initially is that gives them skin in the game. Things that are free, people tend to, oh yeah, give me one. So yeah, it's kind of changes it from being a want to a need.
Okay. So if we were to go with these 15 years after they kind of depreciate out, we would just go ahead and replace them.
Correct.
At our own cost.
Correct.
All right.
So this is the layout for where we're gonna install the speed humps. I try to do a series of them about 500 feet apart. In this case, we've got parking on the south side, so we're doing them where we've got the curb bulb out, so we don't have people trying to drive around them in the parking spots.
So you know that's what would happen.
Yeah.
No. People proof.
Yeah, so we'll have them out there for 6 months to a year, and then we'll have a vote on whether or not they want to make them permanent.
And what, do we know what the cost would be in the end for them?
So for these speed humps, they are about $6,500 for all 4 of them. So
Okay, for all 4 of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
if we did asphalt, those are, I think we estimated it is like $15,000 per speed hump because it's very labor intensive to make those, so.
That's why they probably want to go with this.
The calming device is installed for permanently. Do you include signs that kind of warn motorists that a speed hump is coming up?
Yeah, it's hard to, I should have.
See it on the back there.
This warning sign here is for these speed humps. So we have, for each set, we'll have some warning signs.
I think that helps calm too.
Yeah.
Start to slow down.
Or you just hit one once at full speed and then you don't forget it.
Okay, so at Best Buy, all they did was painted and I still slow down.
Conditions.
To me, just.
Yeah, just paint it with a 3D dimension and I'm like, ah. Okay,
So that's all I have.
any questions? Okay,
Thank you for the update.
thank you, appreciate it. And then our next agenda item is the Public Works Construction Update. Okay. Actually,
Right. That's
I think you all know Ashley, but have you met Deandra?
Hi, Deandra.
Hello. Like your R2D2.
Thank you.
yeah, that's great.
A lot of photos in here, so you're with me while we load them. Okay. Good evening. If you haven't met me, I'm Ashley Smith. I'm the design and construction manager for the city. I'm here tonight to give you an update on construction projects in progress and kind of what's upcoming over the next year. Hopefully. So a summary sheet here, we have many projects in the queue currently. A few that are noteworthy tonight are the crack seal program is still ongoing from last year. They're going to return here in the next month or so and start again once weather permits. We have some wells being rehabilitated throughout the city. pH improvements are in progress at Beach Crest Wellfield as we speak. You may recall the electric vehicle charging stations project that was paused last year. That is starting back up. Rec parking lot. We have some water and wastewater improvements ongoing. Several lift stations being rehabilitated or replaced. Terry Cargill Reservoir is under construction. Carpenter Roundabout and the new Lacy Police Station. Noted over here on the side, we also have several coming up within the next few months, which I'll go into more detail on a couple of these, but also of note, we're opening bids next week for Source 10 well site improvements. That'll be before you again for award. Again, several lift stations for rehab in the queue. Several more production wells that'll be drilled shortly. Water and wastewater valve improvements. Pacific and Home and Roundabout is to be bid this year for an overlay project. Yelm Highway and Compton Boulevard are scheduled for an overlay this summer. And 8th Avenue as well. So just a high level overview here. This is the 2024 project map for Public Works. No, it's difficult to see on this scale, but you'll note here on the bottom left that anything shown in red is a transportation project. Purple is reclaimed water, and then we have stormwater, wastewater, and water projects. Any of the yellow dots shown throughout the city limits here are parks projects and facilities projects that are ongoing. So, you know, currently we have 18 projects active in construction, roughly 40 projects in design currently, and another 23 are funded but not started this year. Moving through, and then there's about a dozen more that are either comprehensive plans, pre-designed studies, safety plans, that type of thing. They're not reflected on the map. So Beach Crest Wellfield pH improvements. If you're not familiar, Beach Crest is the northeast limits outside of the Lacy city limits. One of our well sites that has 2 wells currently that are both offline. And this project is estimated to be complete this spring. They're just finalizing the building that was constructed for housing those pH improvements equipment and pumps and testing components. The one big remaining thing that we've seen on many projects of late is generators are delayed, and that's causing some delay in completing that project. Electric vehicle chargers. If you may recall, the contractor that was awarded this project went out of business last year. And that's a federally funded project. So we've been working with WashDOT to get that moving again. We've contracted with a new prime to perform the work, with the remaining materials expected to be delivered this summer to be installed here at City Hall, Community Center, North Thurston Public School office, and at the library.
We're installing them at the rack as well, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
That's a different funded. Yeah, this is the federal funded, and I guess I didn't realize we decided to go with charge point.
Yes.
That's right. Okay. And can you, and City Hall, how many type 3s are we gonna have at City Hall?
One.
Just one. So we'll have two type 2s and one.
Correct, and the type 2s offer dual charging, so there's 2 vehicles per each, so a total of 4 spaces here at City Hall for those.
And then at the library, same thing, 2 and 1?
Library is just one.
Just one type 3?
One type 2,
Oh,
2
just one type
stalls. I know, it's a little confusing.
And then over at Northwest Public Schools?
That one is also one type 2, so 2 stalls. The community center is one type 2 and one type 3.
Okay.
And then the other,
The really fast ones.
Yeah.
Right,
Type
right.
3 is what everyone needs these days, because the type 2 just takes too long.
Yeah, the type 3 are the fast chargers. It's a direct C to battery charge, so it's much faster than the type 2s. But not all vehicles are compatible with that yet either, so there's an option for both.
And then out the rack, do you know? Or it's a separate part, but.
Yeah, I'll get to that a little bit later in the
Okay.
presentation. Actually, I think it's my next slide, so I'll show that. Okay, rack parking lot. A couple key improvements to highlight here, because the project site is at the corner of Marvin and Stillicum, if you're not familiar. A couple things of note is frontage improvements are included in this, from that intersection all the way over to the fire station. Full sidewalk, street lighting, gutter, all of that. Additionally, just over here on this eastern limit driveway is a new connection where school buses can pull in and park and unload athletes and things, and also stay here for the duration. Just something that's lacking at the rack currently. And then more developed public plaza for kind of queuing up sports teams and things. This one is ready to be paved. Essentially, we're waiting on a weather window for the first few weeks in April, and then we'll push out notice for that when that's solidified. And it is scheduled to be open for public use by June, even if there are a few remaining long lead items that'll have to suspend the contract for. So this picture here is showing one of the three, I believe, seat walls that are within this plaza area. It's essentially a concrete bench for kind of people to mingle. And then here is there used to be a grove of trees right there. This is the electric vehicle charging stations. There'll be a total of 6 type 2s at the rack.
No type 3s?
I think they are type 3s. I'll get back to you on that. You confirm. But yeah, six total stalls for use. I think the ones that are going in at the rack, if I recall, I have 2, they're single vehicle, but they have 2 different types of plugs. So regardless of what kind of vehicle you have, they're compatible for any stall. More to come on that.
Okay.
I think that 6 type 3.
Type 3, yeah.
Yeah.
6 type 3.
Well, then they'll have a type 3 and then a type 2. It's next right to it.
This is part of the Buy America program.
This is federally funded, so we could do.
This is part of the rack construction contract.
But also just as a kind of foreshadowing in the next, month and a half, 2 months, we'll be coming forward with the council to talk about a rate structure for the charging stations as well. So that'll be something that'll be on the radar for council to look at.
Since we're talking about the rack, when is this council gonna first start looking at the phase 3 of the rack?
Well, we're gonna be talking, I think it's the April 23rd work session that we'll be talking about parks in general and all the various parks priorities in terms of expansion, and then start talking a high level conversation about funding and financing. In terms of design concept, we're gonna be doing some community engagement work later this spring, and then we'll be probably in June coming back to council to talk about some of the design concepts for rack phase 3 as well.
There's some minimal work in progress for pre-design.
Yep.
City staff to see what could be feasible there before we start that conversation.
So the idea is we'll get some design concepts by mid-year going into budget, then we'll set up for 2025 for final design.
With some opportunity for feedback from the
Right.
public
Correct.
on what it could possibly look like.
It's gonna be based on that public engagement and also working with the Parks Board, Parks Culture and Recreational Board, and as well as the council.
Great.
Councilmember Stebbins has his hand.
Oh, Mike?
So is there a policy in place for, these type 3 chargers are, only take 1 hour out, maybe a little bit more at the most to charge a vehicle? So do we have a policy for people parking there for 8 hours, or non-electric vehicles parking in those spaces, et cetera, et cetera? And one other point I wanted to make was we did another phase to the rack before, and now this parking stall, and then soon we'll more than likely in the next few years we'll be doing phase 3 across the street, and then the final phase, blah blah blah. What I'm getting at is when the rack was originally built, there's a placard on there for city council that's responsible for building the first initial phase. None of these other phases have city council placards on them. I don't like the placards. We don't do what we do for recognition. I'd rather have the placard removed. But to be fair, if going forward, whatever council consists of who's on it, whoever votes for these projects, we should do what they did. Just
I think
fair.
I see where you're coming from. I think we're a long ways away from that, but I think it's a conversation we can have at the time and when we are actually building the next phase.
And in terms of the charging stations and an hour charge or 30-minute charge and somebody stays there, that's gonna be part of the rate structure program, because there'll be probably a proposal in that rate structure that if somebody exceeds their charging limit, they'll be charged a higher level rate until they move the vehicle.
I guess additionally, there's a warning thing to where these are high enough tech, well, they will text the individual,
Yeah.
say you're at 80% charge.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
Perfect, thank you.
Moving on to Golf Club Road, Water and Wastewater. Utility infrastructure is in place at this point and paving has begun. First paving day of the year is scheduled for this Thursday and Friday. With completion for all the paving work in mid-April. And we'll be back approximately a month later to finish the striping there. Lift station 19 replacement is nearly complete. This was the one up on Willamette Drive. There's a photo here on the left of the current state of the site. Just some minor landscaping and cleanup remaining. And the old lift station, which is shown here on this red dot, is abandoned now. Lift station 34 and 37 are under construction right now, rehabilitated. Lift station 34 is up north of Silicon Road near Nisqually Bluff. Lift station 37 is down off of Balustrade Drive, kind of by the railroad tracks. And again, both of those are nearly complete before the end of Q2 this year. Terry Cargill Reservoir, the cone or the top of the reservoir has been installed at this point, and they're beginning blasting and coating the remaining work. There's some minor paving that needs to occur on Intelco Loop where some of that stormwater infrastructure went in. So that'll likely be, May timeframe, depending on contractor. And then this project is scheduled to be complete and operational later this year.
Did we ever revisit the artwork conversation? I know that it was pandemic time and we were like, nope, can't afford it. You remember that?
Yep. Is it gonna say anything on top? Doesn't say City Lacy or we just letting it go?
When the project was approved, the direction was no, not to do that.
Yeah.
So not to make it architectural, just due to additional maintenance costs and that.
I remember that part.
But will not say City of Lacy on it or?
Nothing.
It's just a final paint coat, but that's
Yeah.
how the project started.
Okay.
We painted like a UFO.
That's a T, we'll put a big golf ball on top.
Really fun things done with those.
Yeah. Well.
Beach balls.
Maybe it's a conversation for future council.
Yeah.
All right, work has begun on the Carpenter Road, Britton Parkway roundabout. They're in process of moving utilities out of the way at this point, and traffic shift is in effect for the next month or so, and then they'll shift traffic again to begin construction on the rest of it.
I noticed they've been grading down the mound,
Yeah.
which was my concern in the beginning.
Yeah,
It's starting to come along.
three corners, I believe, are getting cut back for that project. And then also the Lacy Police Station is under construction, as you're well aware here next door. Estimated completion for that project is the end of next year.
Oh, I have a question for that. It's driving by on I-5, you're like, wow, there it is right there. Are we gonna have something that says, I can see from I-5 that says Lacy PD or City of Lacy or something?
There, well, other than the buildings, but there's also an easement is the agreement with St. Martin's, having an agreement for potential for a future sign. So there is that potential in the future. We haven't planned at this time.
Because it would be nice to, people drive through Lacy all the time and you're like, did I just drive through Lacy? It'd be nice to have a marker that shows, oh, this is Lacy.
And that's something that will, again, we have to work with Department of Transportation because they have
there it is.
permit authority over signage on the right of ways. And so.
But if we put something on we could put something on the building without their permission.
Yep.
Is any part of it usable until completion, or is it just gotta wait till it's fully complete?
Aren't we gonna be replanting a lot of the trees that we had to take out?
Yes,
So it wouldn't be too long before something like that wouldn't be visible again.
there's quite a bit of restoration in that open buffer right now too. A lot of those trees were removed for safety, so they wouldn't pose a danger across I-5. But there will be some replanting done there.
I noticed the DOT right of ways are heavily, you know, there are a lot of trees in it through Lacy, but then you get to Olympia, there's like none. And Tumwater, there's none. You know what I mean? Do we have a problem with?
No,
with the-
there's a lot of trees all the way through the Capitol, and that was a part of the DOT had a state forester, and that was part of his design from the late nineties.
Yeah,
Was to
it's
keep
just-
that evergreen look through.
You can clearly see Cabela's.
Well, that was there wasn't as many trees planted there, but again, we've had some conversations with the state forester about some of that, especially visibility like along Martin Village and that backside there. And I know, but that was part of the response is that they have tight control of the tree.
Because you can clearly see the Harley Davidson dealership.
Lots of places you can see it down there.
Yeah. So just real quick, the ingress egress for this project, is it all gonna come through?
For construction?
Yeah.
No, the primary ingress egress is off of Sixth Avenue, down kind of behind the campus.
They're going in the.
Trucking and
For construction.
correct.
Yeah.
That's what I was.
There will be a driveway entrance for like the public access and parking and the front of the police station here on Third, but during construction, we're
During
trying to
controlled
minimize
use.
activity there.
Go around the back.
You kind of see that here on the photo. This is Third Avenue, so the driveway will be across from our existing driveway. All right. Moving on to a couple of projects that are starting soon. We have the Tomi Park Sewer Project, and we also added water to this project as well. Just to connect straight through and loop around Hawks Prairie, so it's provides better water quality for the system. Be able to have that loop. That was awarded this past week to Rodarte Construction, and it's estimated to start in May. And then another project that was just awarded to Pacific Civil Infrastructure is the Madrona and Westside pH treatment project. I won't go into the weeds on this one here, but just wanted to show you a rendering of this. This is the existing site for the Madrona well site, essentially adding a treatment building there adjacent to the well houses that exist currently. Any questions on either of those? And I just had a briefing on them, so. Okay, a couple updates for projects and design. There's a lot of interest on Koo Park. I'm going to talk over that briefly. So quick overview, if you're not familiar, if it's been a while, this phase 1A will provide driveway access and parking, as well as about a mile of trails and disc golf course through the back of the property. A first phase of a playground, a picnic shelter, and some temporary facilities for bathrooms, that sort of thing. There aren't any utilities included in this phase, so there won't be a restroom at this point. We did have a slight delay on the project to do redesigns for the stormwater infrastructure, as you council is aware. However, we're back on track and permit ready to put those in now. So the schedule for advertisement is the end of this year, with construction starting probably immediately in 2025. Permit dependent, of course. Let's see.
I know, obviously this is the first part of this. Let me, if you get, are you done with this?
Just a couple playground updates, so if you have a question, it's okay.
We've talked about maybe long-term, what else is gonna be at Koo Park. And we've had some conversations about having an amphitheater or something along those lines. Is that something that we're still considering?
It's not in the master plan to have a formal amphitheater, but due to the topography, there were some options presented for more informal, outdoor public event type setup. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, the reason why I asked is because there's not a lot of places to have music, outdoor music over here, and this is one of the most beautiful spots that we have, and I know the topography sort of can make it happen, and so Could you imagine going and seeing a concert right there? I mean, it'd be one of the best places I can think of around.
Yeah.
And so I just want to have that in the back of our mind, because there's just very few places where you can go and listen to music these days. And this could be one of those really great spots to do that, you know, so it'd be nice to keep that option for a future phase. That's something this council would like to talk about.
There are a number of phases remaining. None of those are explicitly defined at this point. Generally, the direction of the master plan was for passive recreation.
Yeah.
but Those conversations can still happen.
Great.
How far out, I know that's phase 1A, how far out would we be for having utilities there to where there could be permanent restrooms and that kind of thing?
That is a funding question.
Fine.
The Carpenter and Britton Roundabout project will get us close. But we still have to get utilities all the way down Carpenter Road to the park. And so the next phase accounts for that, but it is not funded currently.
Cause I think to really start having, you know, big disc golf tournaments, things like that.
Oh, yeah,
we're
we'll
gonna
have to
have to have
Any kind of.
bathroom facilities, things.
Any
like
kind
that.
of events, yeah.
Just a couple of quick new updates that council hasn't seen. The new playground is pretty well defined at this point as we get bid documents ready. So again, with the passive recreation approach and kind of a nature theme that was advised by public outreach meetings and things during the master planning. That's what's set to go in here. It'll be an artificial turf ADA, 100% ADA compliant playground, of which we have a few here in Lacy currently. And then these are a couple of the renderings of the playground equipment that was selected as during the public voting process with kind of the nature play theme.
Great.
To give you an idea, one thing of note too, there will be swings at this playground, which I know is a hot topic, so
Yes.
in the first phase, there will be
Great.
swings.
Like lost all of our swings.
So that's it on that one, and I'm gonna hand it off to Deandra for College Street Extension Design Update. Thank you.
Is this something that we can post and or put in like Lacy Live, just kind of the update for, I know we tell people, oh, just go to our website and get all your updates. You know.
Yeah, that's, I think a update of this entire update should be available on our website.
We'll see what we can do to.
I mean, this page right here really kind of outlines and defines what the future of that space is gonna look like.
I think there's a lot of good information here, so.
Yeah, there is.
We can go on.
Use the update about the park as the hook, you know,
Yeah.
future publication and say, you want to know more about coming projects in Lacy?
Yeah, take a look
Our
at this.
presentation on the
Yeah.
website.
Call Street.
Council members, I'm Deandra Buchanan, has been already explained. I am your other transportation engineer, just so you know. And I want to go over the College Street Extension Design Update. As you should be aware, the project will extend College Street Northeast from 8th Avenue, which is about right there and right there, to 15th Avenue Northeast. It's alleviating much of the traffic that currently goes into these neighborhoods. The project will create a T intersection at 6th Avenue and College. It has a 3-lane section with bike lanes and sidewalks. So for utilities, we are going to abandon an existing lift station that's up here by 15th and going to extend the sewer line down College going north into Thurston County. And we are also placing we're actually reconstructing the entire, I'm sorry, I'm using the wrong word. We're replacing the water line that goes along College. It's currently asbestos. And then we're also going to replace the one that goes along 6th Avenue. So.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously we're doing sidewalks and bike lanes and it's like we do with all of ours. Have we decided if we're gonna do a fence along one side of that? Because there are people who their backyard has been private this entire time and now their backyard is gonna be facing a street. And so are we gonna fence that off or?
Yes, part of the project, the negotiations included putting fences for every single property owner along that portion between 8 going up to what will be the future pond.
Great, thank you.
So the other portion of this project is that we are going to reconstruct 6th Avenue up to the new intersection and also College. So that'll be a new driving surface. The project did have 13 properties that we had to either negotiate for right of way or have temporary construction easements. And we are hopeful that the final 4 will come to an agreement with this in the next month or so. And that is being optimistic. So as soon as the properties have agreements in place, the project will be advertised and then bid. Our anticipated schedule right now is to bid the project in late spring of this year. And per the grant agreement, we need to start with the underground work during the summer and fall months of 2024. Ultimately, the project has 250 working days total, with including relocating utilities, putting all of the underground in, and then of course, building all the new things. There's a new pond and everything else. And so hopefully the project will be done by the end of summer of 2025. And that's all I have.
How long have we been planning for this?
It's been in the works for a while.
20 years?
We're all anxious. So
I mean,
PIB.
As long as I can remember, and I went to Chinook, and I remember seeing a future extension back when I was a kid, so I mean, it's been a long time. Is there any?
We're still working on right away.
We are still working on right away.
That's great. Is there any other?
Obviously, you know, I mean, one of the key milestones there was actually getting the TIB funding.
It was,
For
yeah.
it.
I'm interested to see how the plan is gonna look because there's, you know, that where it teases it, that's a drop off, you know, and I still don't. I've had a hard time envisioning
Where
it.
it goes to the right?
Yeah, and it just drops down, you know, and so how does that tee up and I mean, I have no doubt that engineering wise, you guys have figured it out. I just can't see it.
You're talking about 6th Avenue or 8th?
You're talking about 8.
Yeah,
The next one down.
where it comes, so right here. Oops, oh, dang it. Messed it up. Just kidding. Back to the police station.
6th Avenue where it drives down and
Yes.
down, and we have 8th and also.
So that hill is coming down about 2.5 feet.
Oh, okay.
So that's why a lot of the utility companies need to actually relocate. There's a big transformer there for PSC.
Yes,
And there is also a couple lumen boxes that are kind of hidden.
yeah.
And so we are going to take that whole thing down 2.5 feet and they're gonna have to move across the road where the old curve is. They're gonna be putting them into that
That's
area.
right. Okay.
Yes. The future old curve.
Okay,
You.
Welcome.
is that it? Any questions?
Lot going on.
That's a lot going on.
It's just a highlight is actually had on our second slide, the map of all the projects that they have going on that are either pending or in process or just completion. Citywide, it covers the entire city and a lot of projects happening.
There's almost 100 projects.
Yeah.
You had it all together. There was a lot of projects
I
going
had
on.
a quick question about the project on Martin and Deutero. They kind of had is it Deutero where?
What station project?
No, it's a housing project and it was one where I think we changed the EV chargers from 10% to 5%. At that time, it's
You talk about it's not quite out to Deutero, it's the homes on Martin that it stopped construction, has a crane on it.
yeah, no, that would be on the north side, I believe, and
Right.
that silencing crane, I thought that was a storage facility project, but I'm talking about the ones where if you come out of the rack and you take a right and go down the stop sign and make a left, and they're on the right just before the light.
Okay, yeah, those are a project that's all in the county jurisdiction, so.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the single family homes? on
Yeah,
Silver
yeah,
Road and Martin?
yeah.
Yeah, that's.
So those-
definitely-
That's county.
Those are counties.
It's not
So
Lacy.
the project further up Martin Way to the west that's started construction, has the stem walls up. That's the homes on Martin. I think if I remember right, that's around 80 units with ground floor retail. And they also included, solar efficiency and some other bonus credits to get bonus density in there.
That's in Lacey.
That's in Lacey.
That's one.
And project's currently on hold because of financing, but it's, we're monitoring that piece.
That's the one basically right across from River Ridge.
Correct.
That one's on hold because of financing?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Okay, anything? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Rick, how's the situation with that apartment complex that no longer receives the government funding right there on, is it Copperwood or something?
Yeah, Copperwood is, I think that's also in the county as well. That was
So
all,
it's no longer subsidized, so it's no longer
right.
in the affordable housing category.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, well, next is our update on our public safety and our annual report.
Traffic calming.
There it is.
It's not sure.
You need to share screen still? Sure. So you should escape out so you can get to the.
That's supposed to be us. Things usually do.
Yeah, we are, we have to, we're told to.
Yes, then you should go see it, your share screen. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of like.
There you go. Is it share?
Share.
Presentation mode.
We please don't
Okay.
guess.
Okay, where's presentation?
We don't guess anymore. They don't-
Right there.
This one, right?
Yeah.
They're unknown.
Very.
Some people just don't want to turn this.
So check sheet that's showing up.
Mhm.
We should check to see if that's showing
I
up.
think Shannon's, is it there?
Very good, outstanding. Very good. Well, good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. I have the honor today of presenting the highlights for 2023 for the Lakewood Police Department. My name is Robert Almada, your Chief of Police. With us today is also Deputy Robert Hollis. So, want to join?
Come on up.
Come on, DC.
They're gonna be able to sit in there.
Very good. So I tried to cut this down a bit, but we do have 5 topics to cover, so I will try to get through the slides as soon as possible, so we can get to questions and delve into whatever areas you want to delve into.
So you cut it down to 37 slides?
Was it 47? Yeah. No, it said short version on the title, just to kind of, all about marketing, right?
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
You got nothing on Scott Spence.
That's true. It's fair.
Slide master.
All right, so we're gonna talk about department diversity, we're gonna talk about professional standards, some statistics for the department overall, give you a preview of our crime stats. These are unofficial because they don't come out until July officially, but give you a little sneak peek. And then we'll talk about staffing. First analysis. So using both our City of Lacy census and also for that of the school district, you'll notice the police department racial composition is very consistent and even more diverse than that of the community and very close to that of the school district. So we're very pleased with our level of diversity, and we are in fact one of the most diverse departments in Thurston County. So we're very happy with that. We put a strong emphasis on being inclusive and welcoming to all. So also looking at breakdown of our activity, making sure that there's equity. You'll notice that everything is representative of of the amounts we talked about earlier. Really interesting, I wanted to point out about arrests. So we conducted 1,656 arrests in 2023, and you kind of break down arrests into 2 parts. You have discretionary arrest and non-discretionary arrest. Non-discretionary arrest would be a DUI arrest, it's a mandatory arrest, a domestic violence, and also if the only offense is a warrant, those are all mandatory arrests. So that's where the officer has no option. Obviously, That's why it's non-discretionary. Versus discretionary arrest. So it's about almost half, 48%. So you look at discretionary arrests, again, it's indicative of the arrests, the proportions are the same. So whether the officer has the option or not, we're still seeing the exact same options as far as ratios of racial diversity. So it's a good indicator that we don't have a racial bias occurring. Going towards analysis of the department, as you know, we put we're committed to 30 by 30 initiative to increase representation of females at the department. Overall, we've achieved that when you combine commissioned officers and civilian. We're over a third a female at that point. Of commissioned officers, we're a little over 20, we're about 22%. This is a snapshot from January of this year. Yes.
How has your representation of females changed over time, like in the last couple of years? Have you?
So when I arrived here in 2019, we were about 10%, and we've increased up to 22%. We put a lot of effort into this area. In fact, why don't you talk about the article you wrote? Lacy?
So last year I had the opportunity to attend a training put on by the IACP, which is the International Chiefs of Police Association. And it was a training called the Women's Leadership Institute. And so I was put on in Tacoma. I was the only male in a room full of women. And so shortly in October, it was a great experience, just kind of learning leadership principles. I've had an opportunity to attend a lot of leadership training, but to hear the perspective of women coming up in law enforcement was a lot different. Obviously, I don't have that perspective. So it was a really great learning opportunity for me. But out of that, IACP reached back out to me in October, had the opportunity to write a short article that showed up online about my experience in attending WLI. And again, for me, it's about learning about perspective, right? Mm-hmm. I can be a Black man in this uniform and I have a certain perspective, but I don't have the other side of the coin, so to speak. I'm not a woman trying to make it in this career. So being able to hear a lot of the stories, a lot of the perspectives that the women in my class that I was hearing, some of them truly heartbreaking, because you wouldn't think that some of the things that some of these women who had to experience are still going on today, or it might be something that might be in a super small department, but here we are. Or at least last year when I took a class, some of the glass wall that women are still experiencing in order to either get into this line of work or to continue to promote is still very much a real thing. So the opportunities that we can look at our organization to make sure that we're breaking down the barriers for everybody, to make sure that our police department is truly the most inclusive police department that we have around. Great training and everything like that, and we can kind of prove that with our stats, but providing that opportunity just to kind of see that different perspective from the other side of the court was really valuable for me.
Well, thank you, and thank you for doing that.
So talk about professional standards. So we'll talk about uses of force. So just kind of update everybody. Use of force is any force or technique beyond a control hold or handcuffing. So use of force incidents are viewed by both the supervisor, a tactical instructor, a division, or a team commander, and either the deputy chief or the chief of police. They're all documented and heavily reviewed. All uses of force are reviewed to make sure they're lawful, make sure they adhere to policy, they're appropriate for the circumstances, they're effective, and de-escalation was deployed and then used, and how effective was that de-escalation, and also conduct a training assessment. And also any injury such as complaint of pain or any visible injury, however slight, is documented. So looking at 2023, we had 43,315 incidents that the police department responded to. Of that, only 40 of those incidents involved the use of force, which means we successfully de-escalated 99.91% of all our incidents in 2023 without the use of force. Again, of that 40, 36 of those uses of force were defensive in nature, such as they were to control the movements of the suspect, to prevent an attempt to attack the officer, or to flee from the detention. So of the four other uses of force, 2 were taser deployments. One was a punch or a kick, and the other one would involve the officer aiming his or her firearm at the suspect but not discharging it. So of those 40 uses of force, 21 involved the notation of an injury to the suspect, All suspect injuries were minor in nature, such as a bruise or a scratch or laceration, a taser probe puncture, or a complaint of pain. None of the injuries required hospitalization. So we're consistent with using minimal force, the only force that's necessary. We try to de-escalate everything first. And then if we do have to use force, use the minimum amount of force necessary.
So did I just read this right? Out of the 43,315 incidents we had in 2023, we only aimed a firearm once?
That's correct.
That is
Never discharged
amazing.
one.
No firing.
Wow.
Even the taser only twice.
Wow.
That is amazing.
Go ahead.
I just had a question on the previous slide, just for clarification. On the composition, you have Hispanic as a category, but under arrest, there's no category for Hispanic.
Under the FBI stats, they don't consider being Latino or Hispanic a racial category. So they're lumped into, like myself, I'm lumped into the white category, even though I identify as Latino. So, but since using the census and for the school district and the other census, the national census, they do break it out. So FBI just hasn't caught on or caught up to that yet. So that's the reason for that. Thanks for bringing that up.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's treated as a separate ethnicity, but not a separate race. So sometimes we'll see ethnicity, Hispanic or white, but it's not considered a racial category. It's based on a residence from a court case a long time ago.
Wow.
So page 4 of every application.
So looking at demographic analysis of our use of force, again, it is consistent with the ratios that we saw earlier. Of all arrests, the ratio is around 14% for Black, for example, at almost 80% for white. Again, looking at the use of force on suspects. Again, you see that same ratio. There's some, it's small, obviously it's a small data set, so the numbers aren't exactly right, but it is very consistent with what we're seeing. So again, there's no evidence of a racial bias in the use of force. Looking at personnel complaints, we had 6 personnel complaints filed last year. 4 were formal, 2 were informal. Our 10-year average looking back is about 9 per year. Of those 4 formal complaints, 3 were internally generated and 1 was from a citizen. Of those 2 of the 3 internally generated complaints were sustained, 1 was unfounded, and the externally generated complaint was also unfounded. We found no pattern or practice or policy issues that were found in the analysis of the complaints. Complaints tend to be that are internally driven generally by policy violations.
Does that, I'm sorry. Does that include labor-related complaints like grievances? Are they in these numbers or are they treated as a separate category of issues?
These are policy violations or investigations of misconduct by an employee. Grievances that are labor-related are generally generated by the bargaining unit against us.
Management, yeah.
Yes,
Okay, so they're not in, that's a separate thing.
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there anything you can point out for why there's such a dramatic drop from, the early teens?
I wasn't here in the early teens, I have to say that. But I can tell you, we've put a lot of work into our policies and a lot of work into training our policies and making sure our policies are standardized using, we use Lexipol, which is best practices in the industry. Then we tailor it to the jurisdiction that we operate in. And by doing that, and frankly, we train on, we put a lot of time and effort and money into training. And that seems to have had a big impact.
That was about the time we banned fireworks too.
You said, I think it was 2 out of the 4 were internal, or 3 out of the 4 were internal.
Yes.
So meaning from a supervisor type thing? Okay.
And it may have been a pursuit we wanted to review or some other action we want to review internally. For an example. Looking at overall department stats, these get a little dry, so I'm gonna move through these. Anything you want to drill down into, please let me know. Okay, so just by definitions, a citizen initiated call for services, someone calls 911 and an officer is dispatched to the call or a non-emergency type of call. Officer initiated call for service is when the officer puts a call in dispatch saying, I'm going to investigate the following, or I'm going to conduct a traffic stop. And a case is when a call for service results in a written report. So looking at that, like I said, in 2023, we had 43,315 calls for service. Of that, that's a 4.7% increase over prior year. And that is a 4.6% increase over our 5-year trailing average. So It's kind of tough looking year to year since there's been so many dramatic changes in the last 5 years between COVID and legislative changes, things like that. So it's really sometimes really effective to look back 5 or 10 years to look at that average to try to get a better sense of what's going on versus year to year.
Did we also look at how many units we brought online, how many people, our population has changed, and is this percentage commensurate with that?
That's a great question. So our population increased by 2% year over year. But again, our calls for service increased about 4.7%. So there's not exactly a direct correlation to the amount of people you add to a city. Sometimes there's a increase effect by more folks in a small area.
Got it.
I can go into a whole bunch of stuff about multifamily housing, dual purpose housing versus single family housing and how those generate different types of radio calls. And more radio calls. And a lot of that's just disturbing the peace. If you've got a commercial structure or commercial business next to a housing, there's deliveries in early morning causing noise complaints, there's rattling bottles, there's trash trucks, there's that kind of thing. So it's not necessarily violent crime or property crime. Sometimes just people have to get along with each other kind of stuff.
We increased a ton of multifamily recently too.
Sleep crimes, huh?
Yeah. That's a good way to look at it. So citizen initiated calls for service went up 2.5% year over year, or up to 27,271. And again, that's a 7.82 increase over the 5-year average. And written reports are up to slightly 1.1% year over year, but about 9.6% increase over the 5-year average. Again, a lot more things are being documented. And we really put a big emphasis on making sure we're trying to capture all the crime occurring in our jurisdiction. Other jurisdictions have some limitations on what they respond to and what they document for various reasons. A lot of it having to do with staffing. Yes, sir.
Sorry to bore you with the trend questions, but also I noticed on this one how we used to do a lot more written reports and the population increased quite a bit. So there's a pretty large difference between, on a per capita, how many written reports we're doing. Is that change in policy as well, or?
There was also a lot more crime in 2009. If you look at the volume of crime, it was also pretty high back then too. So we've had a flattening out of some crime trends and increase in others. Narcotics plays into it a big as well. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. So total arrest year over year, our increase is 24.6% increase in arrests. This is a 4.6% increase over the 5-year trailing average. One of the reasons for such the big dramatic increase is multifold. We've increased our number of officers slightly, but also the jails reopened and eliminated all COVID restrictions. The county prosecutors now filing more cases that we refer for prosecution for warrants, so now we go out and arrest those folks. Some of the cases that we weren't able to arrest somebody for, we referred over to the prosecutor and they kind of sat there during COVID because they didn't have the staffing to do anything with it. And frankly, we arrested them. There was nowhere to put them because the jail wasn't accepting certain arrests. So now that those restrictions are down, now we're able to make more arrests.
So
Go ahead.
if somebody has a case, it still sits there, is it still valid to be pursued, or is it?
Statute of limitations expires, yes.
Okay.
It depends on what the case is. It depends on the type of crime.
Yeah, the crime.
For misdemeanors, it's 1 year. For felonies, it could be 3 to 5 years, or some go on forever, depending on what it is.
So you arrest someone for a misdemeanor and you can't be taken into the jail because there's no space.
Well,
But you
actually,
can follow up later.
our misdemeanors do pretty good because we contract the Squally Tribal Jail, right? So we sometimes we have to kind of down phase some of the crimes so we can get them in a Squally Jail because we can usually get them booked into that facility.
But
The
Nisqually
problem is-
doesn't accept felonies.
Right, we contract with them for our misdemeanors. Now, the felonies go to the county jail and they had really strict restrictions because they had to be at 1/3 capacity. And they also have they had staffing limitations. It wasn't only until August, I believe, they opened up the entire jail to all bookings, right? So, for example, we had numerous occasions, frankly, we would arrest somebody with a stolen car and they weren't accepting bookings for people that stole cars. And so we'd actually release the person and arrest the same person a few hours later in another stolen car, which was rather frustrating. So we're really happy that now they're taking those bookings.
Are they still having staffing issues at the county jail, or are they?
I
able
think
to
that's a
handle?
fair statement, but I think they're working towards some solutions there. So I know the sheriff is working very hard on that.
So trying to figure out, like, looking at these numbers. Like 2008, where there was, 38,000 calls for service. And we arrested 4,331, right? That's like the high, looking back at this. Now even go to even the high of 2019, when we had the most call for services, or even 2023's, it's still way higher than that, it's 43,000 compared to 38,000, but the arrests has dropped from 4,331 down to 1,650. So what?
It's less crime.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Smarter criminal.
is something in the law has changed? Or is this mostly narcotics?
Well, some of it is narcotics, and that happened actually later. We see some of the flattening out of arrests, like in 2021, that was legislative, and then we had the Blake decision, which invalidated our narcotics law.
I mean, who were all these arrests, and I know this is before your time, but was most of that, that's before marijuana was legal. Was there a lot of marijuana?
I'm guessing that was part of it, but I could verify that for you and look into it.
Yeah, I'm sure Dave
But I also
knows.
know we were part of different task forces and other groups. That's the time of Jim Mack and some others.
Just to add, just very brief, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Chief, but I had, I did the mayor. Driving while license suspended was had a huge impact also, and the law did change in maybe 2014, 2015, around there, where arrests and, prosecutions for driving while license suspended in the third degree went from probably the biggest crime in Lacy to almost non-existent. And so that was a big portion of those number drops. And a lot of those would result in warrants, which would then become subsequent arrest without a new crime necessarily. But a lot more warrants out there at that time.
And that would make sense. It's been the trend that I've seen in the legislature where they tend to lessen the crime category of various driving offenses or other low-level offenses. They go from an arrestable offense to citation only. And that's probably what you're seeing there, would be my guess based on what the city attorney is saying.
Okay.
Do we know if we're trending at all this year, trending higher or lower than last year's average?
As far as
Total arrests.
Arrests and
arrests are up 24% year over year.
year to
I'm
date,
talking about 2014, this current year.
2024.
Well, I'm hesitant to speak about that because we're just barely getting towards the first quarter. I'm not sure that's a good illustration.
Do you think that bounce is related to the Blake decision and the adjustment to the law?
No, we are not making massive drug arrests. That's not
It's not the 24%, it doesn't account for that.
No, that's really a function of us being able to arrest folks that we weren't able to arrest before, because there was nothing that we couldn't get them into the jail for booking.
Right.
And that ranges from all manner of larcenies, shoplifting, various threats, malicious mischief, various burglaries, those kind of things.
For like 2 years, it was a third capacity. And
Yeah.
you had to deal with
Unless
that.
it was a domestic violence or a crime of violence, and a certain type of crime of violence, you really weren't getting a booking. So almost all our property crimes were not resulting in arrest unless we reduced it down to a misdemeanor and took them to Nisqually.
So it's really hard basically to compare year over year because the laws have, you go from 2008 to now and the laws have changed. The COVID happened, the jail restrictions, I mean, it really not much correlation that you can look at.
There's a lot of information in there that tends to affect the data. So when you look at like 2021, that was a massive legislation on police reform, right? And so that really impacted a lot of the things that we could do because we weren't even allowed to talk to somebody unless we had probable cause there was a crime. That tends to influence how many people you can talk to, and that's a function of how many investigations you conduct. And that's a function of how many arrests you can make out of those investigations. So yes, I mean, there's a lot of asterisks on each and every one. Then there's COVID and all that.
So it's not a great 100% representation of the actual amount of crime that's being committed. It's just our capacity is to be able.
That's our capacity to go out and actually get folks into custody. So that's why we look back 5 years, and even over the 5 year, you're still seeing an increase. So DUIs, slight change, about 3% decrease, 4% decrease year over year. But again, it's an increase over the 3-year average looking forward. And again, that's a function of, frankly, hiring officers. Because when you're a new officer, you tend to concentrate on traffic and you tend to find more DUIs that way. Although a lot of those were from a result of various collisions, people running into roundabouts, which catch a lot of DUIs.
New roundabouts and back then, okay.
Snuck up on me.
Okay, so we're gonna get into crime
Put that
stats here a little bit. This is a national incident-based reporting system. This is based upon a draw of information back in January 11th. Again, these are preliminary numbers. They're likely to change somewhat, but not dramatically. Okay, our population, like I spoke to, rose 2% from 2022 to 2023 to 59,430. Our crime rate, which is one crime per 1,000, how many crimes we have per 1,000 people, decreased 8% year over year, and also increased 2.6% over the 5-year average. Again, it's a function of, I think, our strategy, which is really having a highly engaged patrol division, highly engaged police department, going out and having people that are willing to talk to the cops, help with our investigations, educating folks, educating people. And it's not always about enforcement, but changing behavior through education and through, frankly, their voluntary compliance. I think our model works really well. So again, we're down to 55.9 crimes, or 60 if you will, for the roundup. Crimes per 1,000 residents. You know, if you want to flash back in time, we were at 60.8 last year. The average for last year for the entire state was 67.5 crimes per 1,000 residents. That's a comparison of last year to our comparison cities. So we're really kind of compared to Lakewood or Puyallup, we're like an order of magnitude lower than them. And even when you look at our adjacencies, we're doing pretty well, pretty pleased with where we're at.
It's funny because that's not the perception, seems like, of our population. They think crime's going through the roof right now. You know, it's crime everywhere. It's crime.
Crime is a stat until it happens to you, then it's 100%, right? And frankly, with social media, sometimes certain crimes get more attention than they normally would, right? So it's really a function of sometimes marketing of how much a particular crime or a particular type of crime really gets attracted. So I can tell you our violent crime here in Lacy is very low. Just by comparison to most other jurisdictions. For example, robbery's down 28%. It's down almost 5% over the 5-year moving trailing average. Again, as we're out there, we're active. We have
Is that against the population?
I'm sorry, no, that's actual numbers. These are hard numbers. It's
How is 23%?
no, it's
5%.
no, it's 23 crimes.
23 crimes.
So it's not a percentage. These are actual number of crimes.
Right,
So before we
but how is 23 5% smaller than 17?
then 32.
Yeah, do you see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
A 5% decrease from 2018 to 2022, and it went from 17 to 32.
Yeah, that's
That's the average, decrease from the average.
So if you average 2018 through there,
Oh, yeah.
So,
It
if you add
went way
all
up
those
in
up,
21 and 22. So
5 by 5, and then compare that to the average, it's actually 2023 is lower than the average of those 5 years.
Okay,
but not
that
low,
helps.
but not lower than 18 and 19,
yeah,
obviously.
yeah, exactly. Okay.
It's 5-year average.
That helps.
Sex crimes went up by about 9 crimes. Again, kind of small data sets, but again, this tends to get to large percentages. But again, when you look at the average, it's still an 8.3 decrease over the 5-year trailing average. That's sometimes why year over year comparisons and small data sets tends to kind of convolute the data a little bit. Assaults are a concern, frankly. Again, even though we have decreases, we're still having a significant number of assaults in the jurisdiction. That's kind of the crux of our violent crime. It's just people having arguments that turn into scuffles.
Is domestic violence included in these numbers, or is that a separate category?
Yes, they're included there. Yeah.
Define the difference between aggravated and simple assault. Not its degree of the
Yeah.
assault, but.
You wanna delve into that or which one? Aggravated versus simple?
Aggravated versus simple, so an aggravated would be, there's some type of serious injury that's involved, there may be a weapon involved. A simple might be either I touch you and you don't want me to touch you, or I punch you. It's something, again, we call it simple, but there's not,
So
You're
more
not
severe
spending any
injury or weapon is what
Correct.
changes you from simple to aggravated.
It's not,
Simple assault is a harmful or offensive contact. It doesn't have to be harm. There doesn't have to be like physical violence, like DC said. It could be a touch that's unwanted, but that's a simple assault.
so it's not,
Someone goes to the hospital, there's a weapon involved, there's a visible injury. Yeah, repair mixer call, those kind of things.
it's not about whether or not there was.
Just assault.
So we talked about narcotics arrest, right? So they reinstituted, they had a legislative action that recreated the drug law, simple possession, turned it into a misdemeanor. Which transitioned it from one court down to our court, frankly. So it used to be a district court offense, now it's a municipal court offense. So now it's in the purview of the city, and there's a big impetus to try to divert as many of these as possible into some type of rehabilitation. That's really the push. That's what we want to get folks who get arrested in possession of narcotics into some type of rehabilitation, some type of therapeutic environment, to deal with their addiction. So you'll notice, like back in 2016, that's 214 narcotics arrests. And we were running, going into the Blake decision around 130 arrests, 120 narcotics arrests a year. Then it kind of started trailing off. And like I said, then it really nailed off between COVID and the law change. And then the first year of it actually starting back up again, you only had 39 arrests. So the big concern was that there was going to be a lot of arrests generated by this, and it's really hasn't been the case. It's kind of a charge that's kind of used very sparingly when nothing else will work to get somebody into custody, to get them into rehabilitation. Because we can refer somebody into rehabilitation through our mobile outreach team. So we often try to do that way. Auto thefts continue to be a concern, even though there's a decrease from the peak in 2022. They're still very, very large. It's 42% increase over the 5-year trailing average. And this is a function of, again, social media telling people how to steal cars. Very unfortunately. Also, people think they get into a car, and for a while this was the case. Once you got in a car, we couldn't touch you. We couldn't pursue you. There's nothing we could do. Now, if we believe if you're DUI, there's a caveat in the law that would allow us to pursue you. However, we're kind of reticent to use that caveat. Frankly, we have to have real articulable suspicion the person is in fact a DUI, or reasonable suspicion the guy's a DUI, the person's a DUI. But we are starting to see a decrease now that folks are starting to armor up their cars. They're starting to get the software upgrade. They're making their cars less theft worthy. It is notable that we actually recover most of our stolens, if not in our jurisdiction, in other jurisdictions.
So I would say, so my car was one of those 271s. And what situation was, it was kind of a car theft ring from up north that was coming down and stealing cars in Bonnie Lake, or they were in Bonnie Lake, and they found them with the vehicle, but he said he wasn't the driver. And their police officer said, oh yeah, we can't do anything about that. So I think a lot of that's other people come from here, and they might not prosecute up there, might not charge up there.
So we do a lot of tracking on where it's stolen from, where the car is recovered. And we have a mix. We have folks that steal cars from, say, example, Puyallup, and come here. We find the stolen car down here. And then we also have people that steal a car at Lacy and drop it off on Olympia, and vice versa. We have people steal cars here and drop them in Puyallup, just for examples. So it's kind of a mix of both local theft that use kind of like an Uber, for lack of a better, just to get around kind of thing. And then we have others that take the car then and use that to commit a crime.
So these numbers represent point of origin, or?
Yes, these are the ones that are stolen from Lacy.
Have the penalties on Grand Theft Auto gone way down? Because I remember when I was younger, that was like one of the worst, you were going to jail for a long time if you stole a car. So has just policing changed and sentencing changed with auto theft?
Didn't even arrest people 2 years ago.
Well, that was part of it, but also There is a certain capacity in the court system. They can only prosecute so many cases, and they're going to obviously focus on the more serious violent crimes first and the habitual offenders, those type of things. So if you're a one-off with a stolen car, you might get a good deal, right? So they don't have to waste court time on it. It's just my experience of what I've seen.
I'm sure none of those were a Tesla, by the way, because I know exactly where my car is at all time and I can stop, yeah, anyway.
So,
There's no hack in a Tesla.
right?
My 2010 Toyota Corolla.
So again, the burglaries are 288, increased about 6.7% over 2022. And this is a 43% increase year over year. I'm sorry, with the 5-year trailing average. Like, and most of these are commercial, frankly, 67% of these are commercial.
Just, can you define burglary? That means you broke into a place or?
So either you break in, we've seen a bunch of those, right? Where either you break a window and get in, or you drive a car in, all those kind of things. That's the whole gamut, right? Or you enter into a building for the purpose of committing a felony, and like, say you go in with the intent of stealing something, right? When you form that plan before you went in, you were committing a burglary. Or you go inside anything and commit some felony in there, then you've now committed a burglary in addition to the other crime.
And so then, can you define larceny?
That's basically theft.
Just, okay, simple theft, shoplift, okay.
You take something that doesn't belong to you.
All right.
And there's a whole bunch of them.
Could be at the park, could be at wherever.
Yeah.
Is robbery the combination of both then?
Robbery is taking a property using violence or fear.
Force.
Or
Oh,
force.
okay. That's the distinguishing feature.
And then do we know, breakdown is how much of this is like organized crime compared to?
Depends on your definition of organized crime. So I tend to use the term habitual offender, right? So people basically make their living stealing. They may not be organized crime, you know, like the mafia or whatever, but they're habitual offenders, right? And that's what I strive for. We have rough number, a third of our crime is generated by habitual offenders. That is just a really rough estimate. But we have habitual offenders that work the area. If we see certain indicators like, well, that's probably this guy or this guy, because that's what that guy usually does. We have a crime analyst that's pretty adept at doing that. And he tracks these folks pretty closely because he can tell if someone's in custody, certain crime types go down, they get out of custody, and also that crime type goes up with that particular MO, that modus operandi, how that person does that kind of crime. And there's lots of examples of that. And we have meetings with judges and prosecutors. Well, yeah, there's patterns, right? And we're in the people business and people just follow patterns. And that's we do a lot of trend analysis and pattern analysis. Okay, moving on. So residence burglary is about 56 residential burglaries. These do not include domestic, incidents where they're in a relationship and you take something you shouldn't have taken, or you entered when you should have entered, type of thing. 16 and 56 occurred in apartment buildings. Of those residential burglaries, the vast majority of them are really involved a garage, a shed, a storage unit, but those are still considered residential in nature.
Shut your garage door.
And most of it, if people would lock their doors, shut their doors, that would prevent most of that.
Keep people honest.
Speaking to larcenies, which was an earlier question.
Where's the other ones?
Which other ones?
Well, it says there's 56 and then the numbers only add up to 42. I'm sorry, 40. There's some categories that are really obscure. Okay.
I didn't delve into those.
Okay.
So, because I was asked to reduce slide number. And some of these really got obscure.
Some of the missing ones might just be houses.
And speaking of obscure, we're getting into larcenies. So larcenies is a large category of theft. And it ranges all over the place from, I took a garden hose from somebody's front yard to going into a retail establishment, stealing something and shoplifting. It just kind of runs the gamut. There are tons of different types of larcenies. And so we had 1,259 larcenies of that. That's an increase of about 4% over the 5-year average, a small, actually a 9% decrease year over year.
So, of this 1,259, 1,389, these are just reported, and do these people seek charges, or how are we quantifying? I'm not.
That is a reported theft, and that it may have arrest involved or may not have an arrest. Okay. So if we get called up from a business that said, hey, we just detained a guy who tried to leave the store without paying for an item. He's being detained. We want to prosecute him. We respond. We write the report. We accept the arrest. It goes down as a larceny stat and also an arrest stat.
Good.
So you've seen both of those. Other times you have someone call and say, listen, someone stole my bike off my patio, right, outside my apartment. So that goes down as a theft of bike. That's a larceny, right? But there wasn't an arrest made, at least until we catch the guy riding the bike.
Okay, so you don't have to answer this, you probably, if you don't know, whatever. Of the 1,259, what is our arrest percentage, would you say?
Don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Sorry.
Chief, with the larceny shoplifting, we had the spike in shoplifting over the last several years. I know maybe 6-7 years ago, the big spike was car prowl, especially like fitness centers, those type of things. Have those dropped and shoplifting rise, or are they still, those categories still remain the same? It's just the awareness of them with the public is different.
There's a lot of that, Okay, so retail theft is up. And we've looked at the retail theft organizations that they have literally have phone-based apps that say, hey, if you go to Home Depot and steal X, Y, and Z and meet me at the corner of walk and don't walk, and I'll pay you for that, right? And then that property goes to a larger group, and then they combine it and they sell it online or swap meets or whatever, right? But this person has no knowledge that the one who actually stole it, he just got, hey, I'm just on this,
Shopping list, yeah.
I'm a crook.com or whatever, and says, go here and commit this crime and get this stuff and give it to me and I'll pay you so much money for it. So that's part of it. Then you have other folks that steal it and sell it themselves and those kind of things. So that's the retail theft, right? Some of the function of that is some of the retail organizations don't want to engage shoplifters and they don't want to prosecute them. They'd rather not get in the liability situation, all that. So we have monthly meetings with the retail owners in the area. And we talk about those issues about prosecution, hardening up your store, preventing people from leaving with merchandise, prosecuting the folks you see, getting good video of the people involved, preventing them from coming back to your store, those kind of things, so people aren't coming again and again and again. Or where they go, hey, that guy's here again, he stole from us last time, he may steal from us again, he never shops here any other time. So maybe we gotta keep an eye on this person, see what they're up to.
Can they trespass those people?
Yes, and that's what I'm talking about, when they trespass, they call, hey, I want this guy trespassed, I don't want him back here, then we come out, we do a trespass on that person. So we use that tool as well. That's one of the tools we talk about.
The retail theft operations that you guys have been running and stuff, are you finding them to be successful in, I mean, obviously, I know you're getting people every time you do them pretty much, so that's a success. But are you finding that the word gets out somewhat? I mean, because they, as we know, there's a lot of communication between these people. Is the word getting out to those people that, maybe it's easier to steal somewhere else? I know when I was on a ride along, it was kind of funny, some of the stories of people who were shocked they were being arrested for stealing. I mean, they were like literally surprised they were being arrested for walking out of a store with 2 TVs. Because they said, well, I've gotten caught for this before in Olympia and Tacoma, and both times they gave me a citation. You're actually arresting me? And the officer said, yeah, in Lacy, we arrest criminals. That's what we do.
So that goes back to, we try to do a focus operation at least once a month, if not more, where we partner with one of the local large retailers and we do a focus operation to arrest people that are committing crimes. And we're pretty systematic about it. And last year, when we were still had some low numbers and we wanted to make sure that we were kind of being seen, we had an overtime detail in the Sleater Kinney corridor and up in the Hawks Prairie corridor to make sure that we had high visibility patrol and be present out there and be seen to kind of counteract that. That's in addition to our focus operations. But yeah, the word gets out. It's like, oh yeah, don't go to Lacy because they arrest you. They'll actually arrest you and they'll prosecute you, right?
But it really is on the retail side, how much of that go steal this and this, and then that's how you'll get your money. And there's so much of that was going on, especially when you didn't pursue and so on and so forth. And the retail industry has done quite a bit of work, and we're surprised of how much of that was going on. It wasn't the person stealing and then they have to go find some way to pocket. They were going after specific things that they were going to turn over and someone else was going to put online and sell, blah, 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 blah. Like that was making up a larger portion of the theft that we even realized was going on.
It's crazy.
Technology is amazing, right?
And that's why they've tried to look at a state level of what they can do, because a lot of this was being resold online.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, there's that lady got posted last week. $4.5 million operation. It was makeup.
Yeah, it was spilled.
Yeah,
Stealing a bunch of makeup and so on.
she had a network all throughout the United States.
Really nice house though there.
Yeah, that was a sweet property.
So, destruction of property, a slight increase in destruction of property. And this is a 30% increase over time. And a lot of times you understand these are attempted burglaries. And they tend not, they don't inside, so it's coded as a vandalism or malicious mischief or destruction of property, right? Okay, got through the crime stats. Okay, now we're at the final stretch, staffing. So I know I was here last October, talked about our dire staffing situation. We were down 30% for our staffing. Really need to up staff, really need to work, really need to get folks, because fully 30% of our department was not field ready. Okay, well, I've got some good news. Okay, so these are all the things that we do at your police department. Crime prevention, apprehension, law enforcement training, de-escalation, new legislations, crime impact. Community outreach, transparency and caretaking, and we work on staffing, recruitment, retention, and well-being. Those are like our big four that we concentrate on. And we have lots of projects we work on, and thank you for funding these. We have the mobile outreach team, we have body-worn camera program, we have the in-car camera program, we have the new radio system coming online, we have a new record management system coming online, we have the police station, we have the community academy you conduct. We do the comprehensive emergency management plan, we have accreditation. By the way, we're for accreditation again this year, looking good. We work with, like I said, our partners over the courthouse and on pretrial initiatives. We're really working on trying to get people into therapy courts when appropriate, so we can concentrate frankly on habitual offenders and predators. We have flexible policy. We have technology integration. We have regional law enforcement initiatives we all work on. We have legislative reforms every single year. We have Maple Court that we partner with and work with to be successful. We have narcotics law update implementation that we spoke about. And we do a lot of strategic planning for future law enforcement needs, like we kind of keep talking about. So the reason why I put that up is because my deputy chief does an awful lot of this work, so I want to make sure he gets the credit for it. So I really appreciate his partnership and his hard work on all these initiatives. A lot of the stuff, a lot of the accomplishments we've been able to conduct at the police department are really due to his efforts. So I want to make sure he gets his due.
It's a team effort. It's not just him. There's a lot of people involved.
Oh, that's a lot of talking. All right, let's talk about October. We talked about 50 officers. Here we are 6 months later in March. We have 55 officers now. We have a new lieutenant, which is exciting. She's doing a great job. And we have 2 school resource officers. We're down 1. We're down 1 community resource officer. Actually, we're down 2 community resource officers. We're down 1 detective. And our traffic unit, since we promoted our traffic officer to become a corporal, we have no traffic unit currently, but there's a plan. And we've gone from 22 patrol officers to 26 patrol officers, which is pretty exciting. Also, we have 2 folks that are field training officer trainees. We have 3 brand new recruits that graduated today. They'll now enter the field training program. Pretty excited about that. And we also have a lateral officer joining our team on April 2nd.
Where are they coming from?
Sorry?
Where are they coming from?
He is coming from DuPont. And we just had another one is one of our trainees is from Kitsap County. So
the 26 officers doesn't include them, so with them, you're actually, it takes care of that -6? Right, because you got 6 down listed under them?
technically, yes, but that's not quite how we count it, but yeah,
Okay,
because they're not gonna be field ready for a while. But
Got
the
it.
laterals should be ready sooner than the other officers. The officers once it's just starting the FTO program, we're talking about at least 4 months before they're able to work by themselves. And then they're not gonna be as agile as a tenured officer.
Sure.
It takes them longer to work through the calls, which is fine.
What does a traffic officer do versus a patrol officer?
I'm sorry.
A traffic officer versus.
So a traffic officer's focus will be on traffic-related incidents and traffic-related complaints, whereas a patrol officer takes all calls for service and works a specific district, right? Where a traffic officer may go anywhere in the city depending on the complaint.
So think traffic calming, vehicle collisions, those are the type calls that they would handle and deal with.
Specialist.
Roundabout intrusions, yes. Roundabout intrusions. So with all that being said, all 68 of our authorized positions have been filled. So we have somebody in every single slot. So again, this is a function of Sergeant Walden, who works personnel and training. He's really worked hard along with our partner Vanessa in human resources to get all 68 positions filled. And again, we've had great success. We now are about 20% staffing is either in the field training program at the academy or in a pre-hire status waiting to start the academy. And we'll have everybody in the academy at this point in April. So nobody's waiting to get into an academy. So that's pretty exciting. Let me go to so all 68 positions are filled. I just talked about all that. We'll bore you again with it. So here's my poor man's Gantt chart. So if you look at staff in green means they're good to go. All right, so this is a review of where we're at. Number one is the officer that got out of the academy in January. He should be ready for the field by May. Then you've got three other officers that came out of the academy today. They should be ready for the field by July, August. Then you've got the next set of officers are in the academy, and they'll be ready in August, September, all the way out to December, depending on when their academy starts and all that. Then we have the laterals we discussed. They should be ready about June, right? So laterals go through the exact same training program as officers coming out of the academy, and we do that for a couple of reasons. One, we want standardized training. But as an officer, either out of the academy or as a lateral demonstrates mastery of one of the topics they're being trained on, then they're advanced to the next topic. So they may not take as long to learn the radio, learn geography, report writing, all the different things that we teach. So
they could be sooner than.
Right. So instead of 4 months, they can get out in 6 weeks. So we've had some come out in sooner than that, frankly. Especially if they're like local folks who transfer over.
Do we have someone designated for the third school resource officer position, or is that gonna be on rotation still?
That's a fantastic question. So if you look down below those numbers, so right now we're at 55 going through March. In May, we'll have 56 field ready officers. And at that point, I'll be adding the second lieutenant, and then we'll have to backfill probably a sergeant behind that more than likely. And then in preparation for the new school year, we'll add that third school resource officer. We'll have enough staffing to justify that and be able to support that. We have some other options along the way. So there's only so many slots, as you pointed out, at patrol. And you got 6 trainees coming in. You have all these other needs in the department, right? We've got the community resource unit, we've got detectives. We have other needs in the community, frankly, where we want to make sure we're capturing that crime that may not show up on a radio call or on a traffic stop. Right? So you have investigative units, proactive units that are going out looking for fugitives, looking for habitual offenders, those type of things, and crime that just isn't showing up on your standard radio call, whether that be human trafficking, narcotics enforcement, money laundering, gambling, you name it, right? There's lots of different things. So we're looking at some opportunities in that area as well. So by the time we hit December, we'll have everybody field ready, and we'll be able to have a fully staffed traffic unit. We'll be able to have all the things I just talked about, and we'll be ready to go. And then we'll start looking at other augments that we can do along the way and bolstering some staffing and patrol behind that beyond what they're, because they'll be fully staffed first. And then we'll come back again to see what other things we might need.
What's your start date?
My start date?
Yeah.
October 2019.
Good job. So, starting April 1st, the new public safety tax comes into effect, right? Then we're gonna start collecting those dollars, it's gonna take till June, right? And it's gonna start building up. At what point are you gonna come back to the council and say, hey, this is how we.
April 9th.
April 9th, because that's when we're gonna
Yeah, that's right. I already got
have a
it queued up.
discussion.
I already have it queued up for April 9th work session.
Okay.
And Troy and Chief and Deputy Chief and I have been working on a strategy of a proposal, how we look at that money being spent for law enforcement purposes as the resolution that council passed directed. And it's really gonna be very similar to the ideas we had thrown out at that time back in November and October. And we kind of honed in on what the projected revenue is gonna be and look at where some of those priorities and what is gonna be left unfunded. And so we're still have some things that are gonna have to figure out over the next 2 years how to absorb. But we'll come back with that full strategy on the work session, the next work session, April 9th, to go through council, make sure council's okay with that. And if council is, then we'll move into May 7th for a budget amendment. It's the plan at this point.
So Chief, yeah, this is great. The numbers are awesome for the staffing. Do you have any retirements and things, you know, people, I mean, obviously people can leave that you don't know about. I mean, that happens. But like, are there retirements coming up in that time frame that's gonna put you back, you know, behind on a few positions?
So we do a functional analysis of people that, you know, could retire early or are likely to retire. And they, you know, so you have a frictional, you know, we're in the people business, people are messy, they make adult decision based upon information they have. And so some people want to go to another agency, some people want to go pursue another line of work, some people want to go back to school, some people just want to retire. And so you look at that, but we don't have a huge exposure generationally towards a lot of retirements. It'll be much more, trouble is the wrong word, but manageable, I think is probably a better word. Than it was when I first started, when we kind of had some huge, you know, we had people that were ready, it was a generational time in law enforcement. We had a large generation ready to retire that could retire. And then there was some other external feelings and things happening in the environment that caused them to say, you know what, this is a good time for me to leave.
Sure.
And so, and we unfortunately had people leave the business that probably should not have left the business. And in some other cases that were kind of in the prime of their career, really had great potential and great opportunity here at the police department, but they chose it was just wasn't going to be the right thing for them in that circumstance. So going directly to your question, I don't see a big risk generationally.
Okay.
I think that frankly, the city manager and the negotiators at the table have really negotiated some good bargaining agreements with their folks, which are have some good retention to them. We'll really put a heavy emphasis on training, and that's what I hear again and again as I interview people, especially laterals, why they want to come to Lacy. Besides the fact that Lacy community likes their cops, right? They wave with all 5 fingers.
It's a plus.
Which is really nice. And it's a different environment. I mean, it's being a cop in Lacy is not like being a cop anywhere else, right? I thought I was appreciated as a cop at other jurisdiction I worked. It's nothing like Lacy. I do not go a day in uniform where someone does not come up to me and say, thank you for your service. And that is universally the experience of our cops.
It's awesome.
So that is a special thing to happen, right? So that's a big attractor for folks. But the other big thing that we do here is training. We put a huge emphasis on training. And a lot of resources into it, a lot of time in training instructors and giving that professional development to make sure that we have the best people, the best training possible, so that we have minimal uses of force, so we have really good quality investigations, so that when we catch people, they stay caught, frankly. So that's where we really put our emphasis.
Do we still have 2 positions that are funded as succession planning positions?
We actually have 5 positions that are succession planning positions coming out of reserves. That funding comes to an end of this year, but we're looking at proper money to replace that funding. So now more of
That
them will
helps
come out.
too, because then if you know someone's leaving in the future and they give you a long lead time, you can begin to recruit and train.
We put that into the contracts, trying to promote people, because kind of traditionally people give 2 weeks notice and leave, which in my experience is weird, but that's kind of the tradition here. So I want to have time to celebrate service, right? I want to get you a plaque. I want to get you a cake. I want to make sure that your service is celebrated. 2 weeks, it's kind of hard to get a plaque together and all that. So we kind of built into the contracts a motivation to give us more notice. So that they get, you know, a little something as far as their buyback. So that we can do future planning like that.
Nice.
So it's a benefit to the city.
I was just gonna second what Chief was saying about the laterals, because I have some friends that were laterals and they love working for Lacy. Like they literally can't say how much they enjoy it compared to the past situation. So it's even on the ground level, people really.
The stories are funny because Christmas time, I had some laterals come in and they're working and there's food everywhere in the apartment. People dropping off food for the holidays and they came in and every day they come in. There's food here every single day. What's going on? I go, well, the public just likes us. They likes us and they bring in food and we take a picture with them and, you know, they bring in food. Like we couldn't even get a cookie the last place we were. Right? So I mean, it's definitely palatable. People really recognize and are really grateful for it, appreciate it.
It's awesome.
It's great. So
I found the article that you wrote and I sent it to the council.
thank you.
You'll have it in your inbox.
Okay, thank you for that.
I want to reiterate what I said to the chief at the the recent promotion ceremony. It's just, I really appreciate the culture that you're promoting of celebrating promotions and recognizing our officers as they take the next step in their careers. And I think it's a wonderful thing. And it's a big change from when I first got on council. You just never saw that.
Thank you. Almost 5 years. Sure. Big differences.
Okay, well, is there any other questions? Thank you, thank you, thank you. With that, we have reached the end of our end of our meeting, our agenda. So without objection, I will call this meeting adjourned. And opening day of baseball is just around the corner, so yay for that. Go Mariners.
All 5 fingers.
Yeah.
Chief.
And then Lacy
4 3/4 on this hand.
Lacy Makerspace grand opening is
Ribbon cutting is tomorrow, 2 p.m. At the, of course, the Makerspace. The Economic Development Council, Tourist Economic Development Council is having their board meeting there tomorrow starting at noon. So if you want to show up early to the ribbon cutting, you can kind of get some tours. And yeah, if you can join and attend, that'd be great. Just let Nicole and I know so we can make sure that we can account for who's going to be there and who's not.
And then Thursday.
And then Thursday, we also have a ribbon cutting at South Sound Behavioral Health Hospital. They had just finished a not a physical expansion, but expansion of adding another 30 beds in the 4th floor. And they're celebrating a ribbon cutting to celebrate those additional 30 beds, which is, of course, as we know, mental health beds are sorely needed everywhere, but most especially in Thurston County.
Celebration.
So at 4 o'clock over at South Sound Behavioral Health Hospital off of Woodland Square Loop, if you can attend that, that'd be great as well.
And with that, without objection, I'll call this meeting adjourned. And as always, you keep it classy, Lacy.